God and say, my God, help me. See, I'm going to need for you to understand. You have to understand this one thing, that they had to go somewhere to be before God. They could not just stand in their house and say, Father. They could not ride in their car and talk to God. They had to go somewhere and talk to God. Even when he led his people out of Egypt, I need y'all to understand his presence was among them, but it went with them. It didn't stay in Egypt. It went with the Israelites. That should let you know that, hey, what you got today, they did not have before Jesus. The Old Testament and the New Testament. Do you truthfully want to know the difference? The difference between the Old Testament and the New Testament comes to be quite contextual, but there is a major difference between the two. The New Testament is from within. The Old Testament is external. See, that's what you have to understand about the New Testament and the Old Testament. That way you can understand truthfully why Jesus had to come. See, God had to destroy the world the first time for man's ignorance and disobedience and lack of understanding once they chose to fall from the beginning. And when God destroyed the world, when he gave the rainbow as a covenant that he would never destroy the world again, you have to understand that he came up with a plan for us. Now, God being the man that he is and coming up with a plan for us, that in exchange meant that there needed to be appropriation. And appropriation is a sacrifice that would satisfy God's wrath. See, the sacrifice that would satisfy God's wrath was his son, because his son could come live under the law and fulfill the law that was external. The issue is the law, all 613 of them, are standards to God's righteousness. They are a standard to God's righteousness for a reason. Since man could not live according to his righteousness the first time, God said, you know what? I'm going to take you, Moses, and I'm going to give you the law. This law will help y'all remain righteous. But you have to understand that when they were given the law also is what keeps us from being righteous. Because there's not a shadow in my doubt. And you will start off right after that Passover in sin again. And he would go to a goat, which was known as a scapegoat, in the sins of the village or his people. But also notice what I said, the priest had to enter into the holiest of holiness and sprinkle the blood of an innocent lamb upon a mercy seat that was between two angels. So when you understand what he had to do, and when he came out of there, he left. That there's not a human on the face of this earth that could do what Jesus did. If there was a human on the face of this earth that could do what Jesus did, they would have been done it. Nor would he have to sacrifice his son. See, God needed blood. See, y'all have to understand what the Passover is. The Passover was about that mercy seat. There's a mercy seat between two angels, cherubim, however you want to call them. But that mercy seat was where the high priest would go into the holiest of holies and sprinkle the blood of a lamb on it. And that would allow God to be appeased for that moment. But he would only pass over the sins for that year. Were allowed to roam free in the wilderness from the scapegoat. And now you have to understand that immediately there's a part of this story. Just to be in contact with God, just to ask for that forgiveness. See, I'm going to need for you to understand. You have to understand this one thing, that they had to go somewhere to be before God. God and say, my God, help me. They could not just stand in their house and say, Father. They could not ride in their car and talk to God. They had to go somewhere and talk to God. Even when he led his people out of Egypt, I need y'all to understand his presence was among them, but it went with them. It didn't stay in Egypt. It went with the Israelites. That should let you know that, hey, what you got today, they did not have before Jesus. So when he chose to send his son as that propitiation to satisfy his wrath, to come live under all 613 of these laws, you have to understand that he fulfilled the law of righteousness. That's what we all forget. He fulfilled the law of righteousness. It wasn't like he made up things. Thou shalt not kill. You shouldn't kill to be righteous. You should not commit adultery to be righteous. You know, there's a million other things. Some of them were ceremonial laws. Some of them were moral laws, and some of them were laws for festivals and things like that. But now, you have to understand that all these laws I'm talking about are external. There's nothing inside of you. These laws are external. Being external, you fell under the law, and you also fell under the sin of not being righteousness, because we could not fulfill the law as humans in our fallen nature. Why could we not fulfill the law? We no longer had the Spirit of God, because when God cursed man lost the Spirit of God. But we didn't lose the Spirit of God as he chose to leave us, because he still had grace. That's why we here. That's why y'all listen to this video today, because we had grace. Grace is something we did not earn. Grace cannot be earned. It is something given that's not deserved, and his grace gave his son. So no longer could the Spirit of God be confined to going into a tabernacle or going into a temple that they built. The grace of God allowed us for his presence to reign again, because God could not be in the midst of sin. So long as we were under the law, not believing in his son and the propitiation that he had done. Folks, I'm sorry, I had to take a minute, man. I just had a moment. But long as we remain under that law, not believing in what his son had done, his presence cannot be among you. That may be difficult to understand, because he provided a way. I've been mentioning it the whole video. He sent his son. Old Testament law, suppress, become slaves to sin under the law of righteousness that he had given Moses. Now, the propitiation is in you. It's Jesus Christ. It's in you. That propitiation is now in you. You're no longer under the law of righteousness where we will be unrighteous. Now you have the propitiation of Jesus Christ within you. No longer do you have to worry about something that's external to keep you righteous, because now Jesus is in you and he will keep you righteous from the inside. See, a lot of things is we work on the outside and we forget about the inside. The inside is where Jesus Christ resides. And when Jesus Christ resides, he sits at the right hand of his Father. Right now, the right hand of his Father is in me. And he wants us to come through that right hand so our enemies can be our footstools. I will expand upon this video, but I just wanted y'all to know and understand that the difference between the Old Testament and the New Testament. Old Testament, external. New Testament, internal. Old Testament, laws that we were under. The laws of righteousness that we would have had to follow to be righteous. New Testament, law of Jesus. Accept him as your Savior. Don't deny what he did on that cross. Believe in him and keep his commandments. Love thy God with all your heart and love thy neighbor as you love thyself. That's in you. Man, y'all have a blessed day.